Welcome back to video 7. Today we're going to take a look at the dermis specifically. We'll look at some of the structures and the functions located there. So let's go ahead and get going. So if you'll remember from our last lecture, there are two layers of the dermis. You have the papillary layer and the reticular layer. And remember that the dermis is deep to the epidermis. Within the papillary layer, you're going to have some projections called dermal papillae. Basically, these dermal papillae, you can think of them as kind of almost finger-like structures that are poking superficially. And what they actually do is they end up indenting the epidermis as it lies above it. With those indentions, we'll see the alternating waves that you get. Think of it as just a wave-like pattern, but it's poking up towards the epidermis will actually lead to fingerprints. And the reason that everybody has unique fingerprints is those grooves and those dermal papillae are unique in their pattern between each individual, even between identical twins. The function of those dermal papillae, however, is not just so that the police can ID you when you're trying to get away with murder or something, but it's actually to increase the friction that you have on the palms of your hands and on the soles of your feet. Again, those are the two surfaces that you most commonly are touching where you need friction to be able to hold on or hold yourself up. In the reticular layer, this is going to be deep to the papillary layer, so we're just getting more and more inside the skin here. You're going to find all sorts of structures, including sebaceous glands. Their job is to produce oil to give you that kind of nice natural glisten, or maybe you aren't a fan of, but those oils on your hair and skin. You're also going to find structures like the erector pili muscles. Their job is to make your hair stand on end when you have goosebumps. How they do that is actually the erector pili muscle is attached to the hair, to the end of the hair. We'll see that on the picture on the next slide. But they will pull that hair and make it stand on end. And when that hair is standing up, it's trapping a lot more air right next to your skin. And your body is going to warm that air up, and that's going to help keep you warm. You'll kind of create this, you naturally have sort of a warm bubble around you. But when your hair is standing up, you're trapping more air, and that's increasing the warm air bubble that you have around yourself. Also within the reticular layer, you have blood vessels and nerve receptors. Remember, you aren't going to start bleeding until you have a cut that reaches at least the reticular layer. That reticular layer, all those blood vessels are going to nourish the tissues that are around them. You can think of nutrients kind of leaking out of them through capillaries, and we'll get into how that all works next semester. But it's also the reason why the epidermis, especially the stratum corneum, is dead, is because you have to go through all 4 or 5 layers of the epidermis and the papillary layer until you get to the reticular layer, where nutrients are actually being distributed. So here we can see on this image a picture or diagram of what your skin might look like. Up here you can see the epidermis bracketed right here, the epidermis and the 4 or 5 layers of the epidermis. And then you can see the papillary layer is very small because it's basically only the region where you have these waves, these indentations poking up into the epidermis where they can potentially lead to fingerprints if they are on the palms of your hands or the soles of your feet. And here you can kind of have them isolated on this side. Down in the reticular layer, that's where most of the structures are going to be located. You have your hair follicle all the way through here, shaft being everything poking out. You have the root of the hair. You can actually pull hair out and cause it to bleed because some blood vessels will flow into the hair. You can have the sebaceous glands secreting oil onto your hair. That oil should keep you healthy or keep that hair healthy. Actually, whenever you take a shower and you use shampoo, what you're doing is removing the oil that your sebaceous glands work so hard to put on your hair. And then what happens when you use conditioner after using shampoo, you're basically turning animal fat into the role of the sebaceous gland. So showers are highly encouraged though, but it's kind of interesting that we remove our own oil so that we can put animal fat on our hair instead of what our body normally produces. Here you can see an erector pili muscle. There's another one here. When that erector pili muscle shortens, it contracts. It'll make the hair stand on end, and you can trap a lot more air next to your skin for your body to warm up. You can have an eccrine sweat gland. So here you can see the water and salt and everything like that are going to be formed here are going to be travel through this duct all the way to the skin to be released whenever you sweat. You can kind of see some hidden in the background as well. You have blood vessels, red being arteries, blue being veins. You can see the mixture of purple here where they are switching from an artery to a vein. Again, we'll touch on those more next semester. And then you have some lamellar corpuscles. Their job is to sense things like pressure against your skin to send information back to your brain about maybe what you are touching. Down below the subcutaneous tissue, the hypodermis is primarily fat. Remember, we don't consider the hypodermis part of the skin because it's mainly a bunch of fat that is anchoring the skin to the rest of your body. So functions of everything, first off, we'll start with keratin. I know we mentioned that when we were talking about the epidermis, but keratin is a very tough, fibrous, waterproof protein. Its job is to keep water out as well as keep water in. That keeping water in is maybe the more important role that it plays. It also does a good job of keeping other chemicals out, just in the structure it has. Melanin, again, we talked about those before, being produced by melanocytes, especially in the stratum basale. They're going to provide some UV protection. So that is the sunlight is going to strike your skin. Those UV rays can be damaging to the DNA in each of your cells, and so melanin is going to help absorb some of that UV light to protect your cells. That is also why when you tan, you get darker, because you're subjecting yourself to so much UV light that the body is responding by producing melanin to help protect those cells. Sweat glands, they're going to disperse heat from the body. When that water and salt and everything is secreted out onto the skin, the removal of water isn't what cools you, it's the evaporation of that water off your skin. As that water leaves your skin, it's going to pull some heat with it as it evaporates, because to get from a liquid to a gas requires a lot of heat and a lot of energy. So it's going to steal some of that heat energy off of your body as it evaporates. And so it's going to disperse heat that way. In there, like I said, there's salts, there's water, there's also some urea and uric acid, basically just some nitrogen waste that you have in the body. Lastly, when you are out in sunlight, you're also going to synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D is very important for your bones, actually, because what it does is it promotes the absorption of calcium in your digestive system. So you can drink milk and you can get a lot of calcium from milk, but if you don't have vitamin D also in your system, you'll get very little calcium out of the milk. And actually, because people are getting less and less sunlight, as we've seen a trend in people avoiding the sun for many, many years, what we've actually started doing is called fortifying milk, where we're putting vitamin D in milk so that you drink the milk, you get the vitamin D from it, and then that vitamin D turns around and helps you absorb the calcium out of the milk as well. So that is all we have for today. Again, as always, if you have any questions, just let me know on the updates board.